Welcome to Artcasters, episode 366. We've got Will Bryan with us today, who we'll get to in a moment. Scott and I just got back from Creative South. We're going to talk about that today, and we're also going to talk about something Will has been doing over the last couple of years since we met him the first time we went to Creative South, which is kind of getting into the mural scene and those types of things. But before we do that, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Corey Kerr, and I'm going to put those up right there. There we go. And you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. You're on my channel, so hit the thumbs up thing and all the bells and stupid stuff that the hoops that they make you jump through. This is worth watching. And if you're interested in things that I'm selling, the t-shirts, the hats, the mugs, the flags, whatever else, you can go to CoreyKerr.com/store. And if you want to make sure that you get to see what you want to see rather than what the algorithm wants you to see, you can go to CoreyKerr.com/email and set up for the email newsletter. Scott, where can we find your stuff?
You can find, if you go to YouTube, I'm currently taking a little break from YouTube, but I still have over 1,000 videos on there, many of which are about comics and making comics. So if you want to dive in there while I kind of take a little kind of break, there's plenty of stuff there, including my How to Make Comics series, Making Comics 101. And speaking of comics, if you go to my website, you can find my comic, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. Just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. You can also find a bunch of digital tools that will help you make comics, as well as a bunch of other stuff there on my website over at circworks.com.
Cool. And Josh, where can we find your stuff?
You can find me at joshuakemble.com. You can also find me at Joshua Kemble on YouTube, where I do live streams almost daily. And then I also do a pretty frequent vlog that just sort of talks about like art stuff. And then you can also pick up my two books, Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories. Jacob's Apartment is a slice of life graphic novel about two young 20-somethings are trying to find their identity, and both are hit by a curveball. Jacob, the main character, his father is diagnosed with cancer. Sarah, his roommate, is basically like going through a past broken relationship. They're both roommates, and they find that as they're struggling to kind of find their identity, they find each other, and their dreams and reality start actually overlapping. So it's kind of like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, put it in a blender with Ghost World. That's Jacob's Apartment. And then there's Two Stories, which is my comic trying to destigmatize conversations about mental health. So those are my two graphic novels. And if you want to see me working on the third graphic novel, make sure you're subscribed to me on YouTube. So yeah, that's what I got.
Cool. All right. So Will, we met you. I'm trying to recall. I think 2019 Creative South, I was like waiting in line to like register, and I think you just like started talking to me because I was like nervous and not wanting to talk to you. You just walked up and you're like, hey, and then we were like friends all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's kind of how Creative South works. But yeah, I actually didn't remember exactly where in the weekend that we met. I just knew that at some point we crossed paths, and then we pretty much have hung out every chance we got since then.
Yeah, I think it was, if I'm recalling correctly, you were telling me that you were thinking about getting into murals, and I know it was in that hotel that's on the other side of the bridge from everything else. I can't remember what that hotel is. Anyway,
can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either. But tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find your stuff.
Sure. So I'm Will Bryan. I run a design studio called Will Bryan Design that focuses on branding and marketing communications for purpose-driven brands. And that's what I do majority of the time. But I also have passion projects that I do through public works of art. And that's what Corey was talking about, where I take my background in fine art and illustration and painting murals growing up. We can talk about that in a little bit. And use it to create public art in some cool ways. It gets me off of the screens and out into the real world. So those are really the two places that I kind of express myself lot of client work through Will Bryan Design, and then some public personal work through Public Works of Art.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, good. Yeah, I think we'll get to the mural stuff. But let's talk about Creative South. So Scott, how do you want to format it? Should we all go around?
Maybe just a brief kind of introduction to what Creative South is and why it's different from some of the other conferences, and why he's kind of splits his time between the South and the West Coast, but for those of us who aren't in the South, why we would make the trek way out there, as opposed to try to go something a little more local. And so just kind of talk about Creative South and what it is, and anyone that's not familiar, fill them in.
Yeah. So I guess let me switch over here. So Creative South, and you guys jump in and fill in the blanks. I think you first came across it, right, Scott?
Yeah. So I listen to a lot of. I kind of go in and out of sort of the design space. I mean, I do illustration, but I also do graphic design, and I follow a bunch of stuff on just a number of podcasts that have to do with design or and they talk about illustration and all that, but just creative, the business of creative, whether that's something like The Future with Chris Do, who was a speaker the first time we went back in 2019, and a fellow like Aaron Draplin, and some of the people that are I think another speaker at the first one we went to was Jessica Hish. So just a lot of kind of design rock stars and stuff like that. And they're always just talk about, you got to go to conferences and everything. And the one that stood out was Creative South, and everyone that went to it just said how great it was. And it's just not like your typical networking type thing. I mean, when you go there, it's just, you kind of just go to hang out, and it's weird that you would, and I would say it's probably reasonable for a design conference, but it's weird that you would spend the money to go hang out if you're not actively trying to wheel and deal or whatever. But it's being kind of with your people and just hanging out, and things can come of it too, but it's speaking of grappling, is that Draplin there? You drop?
Yeah, no, I talked to not Draplin. I talked to Mike Jones briefly, and I offered to draw a T-shirt, and so he said, "Yeah, cool. So yeah, do one. We'll put it up on our store."
Awesome.
Nice.
I'm working on one. I haven't quite figured it out, but I've got the peach.
Yeah, so the Georgia peach is kind of the main thing. It's in. If we didn't mention, it's in Georgia. It's kind of like on the Georgia-Alabama border, so you kind of get to go to both states when you go there and everything. And we went out and had catfish on the Alabama side, and it's just cool.
I ate gator tail.
Yeah, gator tail. Yeah.
And I prefer it to chicken. I don't know if it's healthier, but it definitely tastes like a better version of chicken. It was.
I would say
we would eat it a lot more if they were easier to catch. I would imagine, like chickens are probably just easier in general to be able to turn into something edible versus a giant tooth.
Yeah, and we
alligator.
went a group of friends. I'm sure we'll get to that, but the thing that was interesting to me was that they have different versions of Southern food. I don't know why that never occurred to me before, but there was a bunch of different people there, and they're like, oh, well, in Louisiana, we call this, or in Alabama, we'd never eat this, or in Georgia, it's like this, or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, so apparently, only in certain parts of the South can you get gator tail. But
that's weird to me as somebody who just likes to try everything. So we won't eat this. I was like, well, I'll try it. I'll try whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty accurate description of Creative South. I think the interesting part about it is so I've been to Adobe Max. I've been to Adobe Photoshop World. I've been to North American Music Merchants, NAMM, both in Nashville and in Anaheim. New York Toy Show. I'm trying to think. I don't know, a bunch of other stuff, like just conferences, generalized conferences that are doing. But Creative South was very different in that in a lot of those other places, you will occasionally meet people that are just interested in having a conversation. Even more rarely will you meet people that are interested in learning about you. And almost everybody else you talk to is just like waiting for an excuse to give you their business card, I feel like. and Creative South is very much not like that. They say like come as friends, leave as family. And I don't think that's fair. That's not inaccurate. And I think I have never hugged more people that I met for the first time in any other situation. Like it's just like
Sure.
a normal thing to just hug people, which would normally sound like a huge deterrent to me, but it like works in that environment for some reason. I don't know. Will, how did you find out about it? Because you went the year before we went. You went in 2018.
Yeah, and I would imagine I probably found out about it through following other people on social media. I feel like, I don't remember specifically, but I feel like I had enough people like on Instagram or something like saying, hey, Creative South was fantastic. Hey, Creative South was fantastic. And like just hearing that from like, you know, in multiple people's timelines, whatever else. And I guess it just got on my radar. I'm like, hey, I need to plan on going to this next year. Because I split time between South Carolina, mostly in South Carolina, but like you said, over in San Francisco as much as I can as well. And it's definitely one of those things, like Scott was saying, the return on investment is definitely intangible. For me, I feel like as a creative, it's just like a recharging for your soul as a creative. Like you just get to go and be around a bunch of people who are also creatives, and whether, you know, there's lots of different, you know, illustrators, designers, animators, you know, whatever. But they're all kind of there to like have a great time together. So it's about community building, really, in the creative, creative fields. And so that's what I love about it, because it's like, hey, like, let's go hang out with our friends from across the country for 3 days.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's literally like, I knew none of the speakers this year. Like you were talking about, like a lot of times they'll have like, you know, well-known national rock stars that are speakers, but I didn't know any of the speakers other than Mina going in this year. And it like didn't deter me at all, because I'm like, the speakers are kind of like the icing on the cake. Like that's all the rest of it that you go for.
The cool thing, the weird thing about the speaker, this compared to like maybe like Adobe, and I guess Corey can speak to that, but it's just I mean, it's not like there's really a separation between the speakers and the rest of the crowd there. I mean, like you wrote up with one of the speakers, you kind of contact, I mean, but the speaker, you just kind of go up and talk. And for me, it's actually, it's easier for me to go up and talk to the speakers because you kind of know a little bit about them. So, I mean, I interacted with most of the speakers and, you know, hung out with some, and, you know, speakers from like the previous, I keep want to go back to last year, but we weren't there last year or the year before because of the world. But like our friend Hank, who was a speaker in 2019, and we hung out with him, and he had a booth there. And so there is like it's kind of structured where there are speakers, there are talks. There's also a small kind of vendor booth. It's not like a Comic-Con or anything like that, but there's a kind of a small vendor booth, and you can check out things. And like Corey was saying, there's not a lot of business cards being passed around. There can be, but it's not like you're just waiting to get. But there are stickers. If you like stickers, you're going to get stickers, because everyone has stickers, and they're more than willing to hand them out and everything. So I've got a whole bunch of stickers, more stickers than I can fit on my laptop or my iPad or anything. So
sure.
Yeah, I've actually started thinking that I might just start covering my desk in stickers and then using maybe a drawing board on top.
That would be kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt bad this year because I showed up totally unprepared. Like this semester has been like a nightmare of a semester. And anyway, so normally like the first time I went, I had stickers that I designed and everything. Anyway, I even have stickers like sitting in my studio right now that I just was too busy to even
stash.
think about like packing or whatever. But yeah, people just hand out stickers like, and they're good quality stickers too. Like people have like taken time to really design them and stuff. That's cool. Yeah. So, and then, so I guess another thing is like, you mentioned like the speakers are accessible. Like there is like on the first night, there's a bridge party.
Oh yeah.
And it's this big walking bridge. I think it straddles the state line.
It does.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
on the
because
one
it goes
side,
over the river there.
yeah. And so on one side of the bridge, it's an hour later than the other side of the bridge, which totally confused me.
Oh, that I didn't know.
First time because
I didn't know
my
there was
phone
a time
kept
zone.
changing as we walked back and forth, and I had no idea what time it was. Anyway, I have since adopted wearing a dumb watch that doesn't change automatically, and that helped quite a bit. But the bridge party is super awesome. They do ink wars. Will, did you ever apply to be in that?
I did not. So Jason Craig, who is the one who kind of puts that all on, has mentioned to me about wanting me to do it.
Yeah.
But I didn't push for it just because, and I would love to do it. It's just also, I just don't want to give up an hour of my bridge party.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Because you have an hour to be able to, to do your artwork for the competition or whatever. So you got to be on for that whole hour. And so,
Yeah.
I might be willing to do it next year. But yeah, I'm just kind of like, I want to hang out and drink and eat for the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good point. That's a good point. I applied for 2019 and I didn't get picked, but I don't know that I would apply again. I didn't try to apply this last time. Because like you said, I mean, it's just kind of cool to hang out and watch it and everything.
Yeah.
I would apply again just because it means for an hour I don't have to talk to people. I really like everybody I've met and I enjoy the conversations, but I'm like an ambivert and I hate initiating conversation. So if someone starts talking to me, dude, I'm in. I'll talk forever. But
Yeah.
I would much rather put headphones on and ignore everybody and draw on a board for an hour.
See, yeah, that's kind of if I have something I know about a person that I can bring up, it's easier for me. That's why it's easier for me to just go up to the speakers and like, hey, this or that or whatever. So, but if I just kind of go in cold, it's kind of. But I'm trying to get over that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and because like you said, I think in 2019, kind of we just went to, just it was the opening day, kind of the not orientation, but registration. And Will was there and struck up a conversation. And then I think it was on the bridge party this year that we just got like, oh, we're both here. And, it's just cool to see.
Because I didn't know that you guys were coming this year. I was, hoping so.
That was part of my total lack of preparation, as I really intended to be like, I want to reach out to Hank and Will and all these guys and everybody that I met. And then I was just barely happy enough to get on the plane. But yeah, because I followed you on Instagram. So did you start doing murals after 2019?
No, I restarted.
Okay.
So I used to do murals back in the day. So I started doing murals when I was probably 15, 16 years old, and I did them all through high school and college. And then while in college is when I started graphic design. And so I went like headfirst into advertising agency, digital design. And so it was then where I was like, hey, like I need to get back into doing some of this mural art that, that I basically where I started out doing, just because I'm like, hey, I'm going to lose it if I don't keep doing it or whatever else. And I had like 100,000 ideas and I've just been putting them off. And so, 2019, like COVID actually opened up some opportunities that probably normally wouldn't be there, to do some cool stuff. So that's what you were following on Instagram, was all the stuff that I did over lockdown.
Yeah, because it was like, I mean, I had only started following you from 2019 on the first time we met, and then it feels like a couple months into that, or sometime later, I guess it was a year if it was COVID, all of a sudden you're like, look at this wall I did, and look at this wall I did. It was like every other day I was like, holy crap, that dude blew up. Like, it was like, because I think you convinced like a city to just give you carte blanche on the downtown, right?
I did. And if I can share, I can actually show you kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you hit
that'd be awesome.
if you hit the present button at the bottom, it'll pull it up.
All right. I
It's
can
pronounced present, Corey. I'm just kidding.
Present.
I've been on a riff today where I've been correcting people's pronunciation improperly.
present. So, all right. So we'll go share screen.
I liked that present. That was pretty funny too.
I saw, while you're pulling that up, I just saw a video of like a self-help group for people that were named in the Keeman and Peele video. They're like, yeah, my name is what was it? My name is
Balake.
not Jaqueline. It's Jacqueline. It's always been Jacqueline, but now everyone calls me Jaqueline,
Jaqueline.
And then, anyway, it was funny.
Balake.
That's classic.
All right.
Yeah.
So, are you seeing my?
No.
No, if you hit present or present
All right, I'm share
at
screen.
the bottom, then
Share
it should
screen.
come up, and then I can bring it up at the thing.
Select the tab.
I have a bunch of questions about what the impetus for murals is too, Will, for after you show us some of the stuff, because I'm curious, like, what initially drove you to do murals,
Money.
Nice.
When I was a teenager. No,
Well,
actually, it's a
incentive.
good story. It's a good story. And for whatever reason, it's not liking Acrobat.
Oh, weird.
If I can get
Well, while you're doing that, I'll tell another story. I do want to say hi to everybody in the chats. We've got Edie and Keeman, Granda Comics. Jim Luhan just showed up, so hopefully he'll leave soon.
Hey, that's a good point from Jim. He said, "Where are those two stud guest hosts from last week?"
They were fired.
Did you guys see how inappropriate and chaotic things get when you're gone?
I haven't watched it yet. I've been grading until
it gets racy.
I spent most of this week in an airport and hotel. But yeah. Oh, Christopher Russman's here as well. Anyway, if you guys have any, the parents are back, Thomas says. If you guys have any questions about murals or about Creative South specifically, drop them in the chat and we'll pull them up. But the first time, so 2019 when we went, I can't remember who the speaker is. Maybe Scott or Will, you guys could help me out. But he had the best idea, and I honestly started walking around town taking pictures of this blank sides of buildings because of this idea. And his idea was, I know who it is now. F something.
Yeah, F dot.
What's that?
F dot from New York.
F dot. Yeah.
That's that he skateboarded onto the.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what he does, and then I started following him, and he started getting a ton of stuff. Like they flew him to South America, and he was all over the place doing these murals and everything. Did a big mural in New York on the roof of this building on the floor of a tennis court. Anyway, but what he does, I think this is a genius way of doing this, is you take a picture, and then in Photoshop, you go in and you do a mural on top of that building, right? And then you make it look like it's already on the building by just kind of doing some levels adjustments and some blending and things like that. Yeah. And then he goes and he shows it. He finds out who owns the building or who runs that business or whatever. And he says, "Hey, can I do this on your business?" And it looks so good in the picture that they're like, "Oh yeah." And he would land stuff all the time, or he would just post it on Instagram and then tag everybody in the neighborhood, like all the businesses in the neighborhood, in that post. And then people would reach out to him and say, "Hey, would you do that for real?" And so he started getting a ton of work that way.
Now you could probably, a lot of people were talking about augmented reality. You could probably do that in AR, like even pan the building.
Right. Yeah. I played with that. I played with AR a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Do you have them somewhere? Do you have them somewhere online, Will? Because I could just pull it up if that's not working.
I was going to say, I'm going to drop it over to you and let you pull it up.
Okay.
Just because I don't know if there's a permission or something, but it's just not wanting to pull up. It's showing me everything else other than that. So let me.
I think you can also share your full screen too, if you want to do that.
Well, even on the full screen, it's not showing.
Oh,
It's like
weird.
it's invisible. Here, I'll try that
I
real quick.
wonder. Yeah, are you dropping it to me on Messenger or in Gmail?
I can do either.
Do Messenger. That's one I have pulled up right now.
Okay.
While you do that, we got a question for you, Will. Christopher Runsman wants to know, I'm curious if Will freehands his composition or projects up into the surface from prepared comps.
Good
So
question.
do you like design it beforehand and then project it or grid it out, or do you just kind of just go and see what happens?
I do both, depending on the nature of the mural. So like if it's something that's like super organic, like say like flowers and leaves or something like that, then that a lot of times I'll freehand because like who's to say what it's supposed to be, right?
Right.
But if it's something like hardcore, like a giant logo or something, then I will project it. And it also just depends on what the timeline is, like how fast we got to get this thing done, right? So I actually would do all of the above. I've done grid, I've done freehand, I've done projection, and so
here's a question, because I haven't done any like outdoor murals. The only murals I've done have been like this one that's in back of me here, or other ones in the house, or I used to do some client stuff like in just people's houses. And for that I use like an opaque projector, but it has to be almost completely pitch black. So you have to like shut all the doors and block out the windows to project it. How do you do that in an open space? Are you using a different kind of projector?
I mean, in the sense of like when it gets dark, it works.
Yeah, so you just have to wait till it gets dark.
Yeah. So all the projections happening when it gets dark. So
okay.
You want to put some cones and some reflectors up so you don't get ran over while you're standing in the middle of the street. All right, Corey says my file's too big to go through Messenger.
Let's just pull up that Instagram account. Let me just do this really quick. I'm gonna go entire screen.
Yeah, and send me your Gmail as well, so I can send it over that way, because it's got some cool before and afters.
Yeah, I'll message it to you. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
I can't see it anymore. Okay, cool.
Awesome. I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey Scott, will you message Will my Gmail account, and as I scroll through, because if I do that, it'll pull up my Gmail on the screen.
How do I know your Gmail account?
Because you've emailed me there multiple times.
Okay. I'm thinking for some reason I'm thinking Google Drive. All right. Yeah. Okay. Hold on.
You have 3 of my Gmail accounts.
Sorry. Any of them work.
All right. Let's see. Oh, come on, man. Okay. Yeah. Here.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit while we're pulling that up about how I got started in murals.
Yeah.
So I don't know if your school districts did this, but growing up, our school district always did like they had made calendars of the artwork of kids in the school district. So did y'all school district do this?
My school district sucked, apparently. No, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, so it's basically like all the art teachers would submit like artwork to the district, I guess the district office or whatever else, and they would pick the best artwork to be in the district calendar. And so I used to like crush that district calendar. Like every year I'd get a bunch of stuff, in it. And so anyway, I had the owner of a local, they opened a new a substation in the town where I was going to high school, and his wife was a teacher in the school district, so she got in touch with me and he said, hey, I want you to paint a mural of what you did on the cover of the calendar. And it was like we had a really, really good athletic program, good football team, and so it was basically like a football player like in the Heisman pose, but he was like a tiger. So like all of his skin was like striped like a tiger. And then it was like on a black background with like this hot pink, like lightning bolt hitting the ground and like blowing up behind him, completely over the top. And so he wanted this painted on the wall in the substation. And so I'd never painted a mural before. So I had no idea how to price this thing. And I'm like, I'm 15 or 16. So I tell him, I give him a quote of like $150 to paint this on the wall. So then I go and buy about $120 worth of paint.
Sounds about right for a first gig.
And so at that point, once I realized, hey, I should have quoted more. But the cool thing is that that he did say, well, while you're working on this, you get to eat for free while you're here. So I made up the difference, and I made sure that I took about 6 weeks to paint that mural. And
free lunch for 6 weeks.
I had meatball subs nonstop. So I made up the difference with all the food I got from it. But yeah. So, and then it was funny because at the end of it, it turned out really well. They loved it, and I told him, I'm like, hey, because he wanted me to do another one. He's like, would you be up for doing another one? I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna have to charge more because I way undercharged last time. I spent all the money on paint. And he's like, yeah. So he ended up paying me like $350 for that job, and then that's when I started figuring out pricing, like what's the actual cost of all the materials for this. But that was it. I mean, that was how I got started, and I ended up painting like 2 more for him. I did a basketball player and a baseball player that all matched. That were this really, this cool over the top style. And then from there, some family members of my girlfriend at the time lived in Atlanta, and they got word that I did murals. And so they asked me to come paint some murals in their kids' rooms in Atlanta. And then from then on out, I was booked up in Atlanta every summer through college. So it was basically as soon as word got out that I could do this, I had murals every summer in Atlanta. I would just go and stay with them and paint all summer long.
That's cool.
So that's how I got started. All right, you got it up, Corey?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll tell you this. Go back to the last photo, and I'll tell you that as we go through. So basically, the scenario is not far from where I live. There's an old kind of industrial part of town that was, it was kind of the old Main Street, but it was really run down. And so one of the ideas I had was I just wanted to paint everything down there. And I got a little bit of a word that the city was interested in making it into an art district. And so I already had in my head a giant plan for what this could be. And so what I did was to make sure that they would buy into it was I went and painted a mural, and I did exactly what Corey was just talking about with this wall right here. I come up with a design and I photoshopped it on the wall. And they basically have like this block party art festival right here, right beside where this convenience store is. So my plan was basically to get this owner to approve this. I was going to pay for all the paint and everything, and then paint it during the art festival, or at least get a bunch of people out there to help. So I designed this in such a way that it'd be really easy to get a bunch of people from the community to help paint during the art festival. And so that's what we did. I think you can go to the next picture, Corey. So this was some friends and some people from the neighborhood that I knew, that I had them come out and we drew it all up on the wall and had them just basically come in and fill in all the flat color. Again, it was designed to be super flat. And
so are you just using a normal pencil or construction pencil or something on that?
Yeah. That's what I usually either use a construction pencil, or sometimes this might be like a grease pencil. You know, like the kind of, I'm pretty sure that's what that was, like a grease pencil, the kind with the string that you pull through. And then, and so the point here was to get a bunch of people in the community, you know, designed in such a way that get them to be able to work on it, let everybody see it getting painted, and then kind of see what it was at the end. You can go to the next one. And then, it was a big hit. And you can the next one. So then everybody's taking photos and stuff out here by this. So what it showed was, hey, there's this ridiculously crusty old wall on this semi-scary convenience store. And we just painted this big mural on it. And then all of a sudden, like, everybody like loves this. It went from like the eyesore to like the best place in that part of the area.
Right.
And so it was kind of to show the city, hey, like, this is what we could do to this whole place.
Yeah.
And they love that. So, and then I'll show them also that I could do it. So then
the best part about this is I want to know who pulled all those weeds. There's like 3 feet tall dead weeds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. I'm pretty sure that we ended up doing that as well. I think like this is such a good like case study for this, because like this is just, you see this crap everywhere, you know. Mm-hmm.
This is just any building that's 15 years old or more.
Sure.
And this is so much better.
Yeah, and it's like
tell me about this. Sorry, go ahead.
Completely changes the way you view that area. All right.
Yeah.
So stay right here.
Okay.
All right. So so this was the beast right here. This is the Frankenstein building. And so what I did is I went to the city and I basically said, hey, if you want to do this in an art district, this is what we can do. And I basically did exactly what you said. I mocked up all these things. So this building, we would do it this way, you know, and I picked out like 3 or 4 different buildings, how we would paint them, you know, and I basically said, this is what it would take. This is what it would look like. This is what it would cost. And if you can come up with this much money to do it, then I will basically be the creative director for this art district and make all this happen, because you're a municipality and this is all out of your ballpark. Yeah. And so they went and got a grant for that amount and told me, hey, we got the money, so we're ready for you to start. You got cool. 6 months to do it all.
I might, if you're cool with it, I might take this whole pitch deck and just bring it to the city where I live and say, look, we could do cool stuff.
So this one, this was one of my favorites. So this was it's an antique store, a appliance store, and like a apartments, and it used to be like where the railroad workers, there's train tracks all around this, used to stay here. It's a really historical building. So you can see what we did on the next slide, what we did with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you can kind of flip through. So we basically took this kind of railroad theme. So that's what it looked on the. And so and see that kind of ghosted logo there. It says it's Seaboard Railroad, and that's the old railroad that's like obsolete now.
Is that a watermark, or is that actually painted on the building?
No, that's painted on the building. So
is it? Wow. Okay.
If you look at the Instagram, you can see up close, and it's like tone on tone on the different colors. So it looks like in person, does it look like it's kind of projected as well?
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like an overlay, you know, like the way that you would just do a digital overlay at like a 50% opacity or whatever. Right. We just went in and just reduced the colors on each of those shades. Like it's even on the water spout, like the gold rain spout that comes down.
Wow.
You painted on that too? It's hard to see here, but wow.
That's awesome.
You got a close up of that?
On Instagram, he's got that.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can pull that up too.
And so, for instance, that logo we projected in the middle of the night. Nothing else on here was projected. Everything else, because this is all pretty geometric.
Yeah.
And I'm not even calling these murals. So I've called these art buildings. This is what I called them in the art district. It's in the sense of you're not really painting like a mural on them. I'm actually painting the entire building in a way that's just basically using design. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So this is my wife. That's my wife, Katie, right there. she and both of my daughters actually come help sometimes.
Yeah, so you can kind of
Yes.
see
Huh. Oh
that
wow.
you got that kind of, yeah. So it's penciled out. So you project, because let's show this whole thing. So you've got the projector at night,
Okay.
Mhm.
and then you just go in with the grease pencil or a construction pencil.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of just do it because you can see a few of the little lines that you
Mhm.
haven't quite erased yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And then over here.
so Jim says inspiring, and I'm just thinking right now, wouldn't Jim's characters be great on a building?
Yeah, they
Oh, yeah.
would. I want to see them in seedier parts of the outskirts of LA County.
Yeah, they need
I want
to
to
be,
see
'cause there's those
Jim
kind of characters.
Lujan's art on like liquor stores
Mhm.
everywhere. But did you guys miss the comment Jim made about his high school? Because it was pretty classic.
Throw it up. I missed it.
He said, my school district made calendars of the kids' mugshots, hard life. Anyhow.
That's funny. Edie is asking what kind of primers and paints you use for exterior murals. Acrylic, alkyd? I don't know what alkyd is.
Yeah.
This is how much I know about paint.
Sure.
I don't know if that's a second word.
Yeah. So what I use for all this exterior stuff, and it can be pretty much anything, but you're painting it just the same way that you would paint any building or a house or whatever else. So, like all of that, I believe is like Sherwin-Williams, like whatever their top of the line brand is that Sherwin-Williams carries.
Got it.
But it doesn't have like, most of the stuff I've always ever painted was stuff literally off the shelf at like Lowe's. So, some of the like more detailed interior stuff, kind of like what you're talking about, Scott, I would have, some different acrylics in it, but it's always been acrylic. I don't think I've ever done any oil-based murals, interior or exterior.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It takes forever to dry.
Yeah.
I remember one time I painted on I had to use enamel paints because I was painting on a trailer, and oh man, it was a nightmare. I hate anything that doesn't dry like right away. Plus in Arizona, you're painting on metal and it gets hot.
Yeah.
So that was the last trailer I painted.
Oh yeah, nice.
So I wouldn't do latex either. I don't think latex would.
No, I mean latex is kind of house paints. I mean,
Yeah,
that's probably
yeah.
If you're
No,
going to Sherman
yeah, this is all
Williams,
latex.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's technically, I guess it's acrylic latex is, I guess, what it is.
Gotcha.
And it's really what you're choosing is more of the finish of like whether you're going to do it flat or semi-gloss or gloss or whatever else. And obviously, outside, the more gloss it is, the more protection it has. Some things we do will actually go back with a complete, like a clear coat over the top of it to do for just, again, to resist against fading. And so Sherwin-Williams also makes like a clear coat, like a diamond coat or something like that you can roll over the entire thing. And it's just like a UV coating if you want to go that far to protect it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And so, so this building was the Frankenstein, and this is the other end. You can keep going, Corey. And again, just kind of these abstract tracks you can go ahead and flip through.
Oh, there's already a mural on there. You see that?
Yeah.
So we painted a face.
Yep. Yeah. But you can see like the difference. Like look at that wall right there, and then look at it like the difference that you feel about being in that space, right?
I also love that like the businesses upgrade their signage with this because
I did that too.
Oh, you did? Okay. So you offer that as well?
Yeah. So that's where I brought in the graphic design portion of this. So I wasn't going to think about letting them come up with whatever signage they wanted. I'm like, no. Like we're painting this whole place. Like I'm going to design the signs too.
You don't like their like weird like vinyl sign that they got for $20 at the back of some shop.
Well, you can see, keep going, and you'll see like the next set of signs.
Look at that
detail.
It's all dirty.
Yeah, detail.
Yep. If you look close enough, you can see the nails that they've hung it up with. That's great. I love it.
Yeah.
So I designed these all the signage to go along with the building itself. So if you keep going, I think that has this really cool old
Oh wow.
like rusty hanging sign right there. You could see like that it had layers and layers of crust on it, and we sandblasted that whole thing.
Wow.
And made it a signage system that matched the building.
Did you get any feedback on how that changed how it changed the business?
I mean, not in the sense of not qualitative, not quantitative yet, but in the sense it's had a big impact on them and helped. It's helped the whole area, like the whole area down there, because there's a restaurant across the street, and that there's apartments that are in there. It's kind of like these antique apartments that nobody would ever know how cool they were on the inside because the building was so terrible. And they started to fill up after we painted it.
I remember seeing this one.
The great thing, and this is, for anyone that's interested in getting into doing this, and it's kind of like a while back we had, a few times we've had Scott Campbell, the window painter, and it's the same thing with his business. But when you do something like this in a public space, it's there for everyone to see, and you do one building and then somebody else from another business is like, oh wow, look at what you did, could you do something for me? And it just kind of spreads. I assume that probably happened with you too, Will.
Well, the cool thing was it wasn't even that they were asking me to do it. It was just that other business owners were like started painting their buildings funky colors and stuff. So so instead of just going back and painting their building, beige, they just started painting them in funky colors that matched the rest of the murals and stuff. So even that, like, again, had nothing to do with the city or, grant funding or anything. We just kind of inspired the other people in the area to say, hey, we're an art district, so we should paint it in a creative way.
Yeah.
I feel like the 90s Californian in you is coming out on this one, because I think I had a polo shirt exactly like this.
Yeah. No, this is total throwback vintage.
I love the color choices.
Yeah. I actually think it was this was semi-inspired by the old VHS sleeves. You remember the old
it's funny because I don't know if we told you, Will, on the way up, Corey and I stopped at this. It was just a group of different museums, and there was an antique store in the front. But we went there specifically because there was a lunchbox museum, but they also had like an old radio museum. But Corey was in there just taking pictures of all the old pulp novels and stuff, and we were looking at all the old VHS covers and stuff like that, and just to get inspiration. But
so pay attention. At some point in time in the next couple months, I'm going to release a digital product of Scott and I's experience there, where it has all of the color palettes from all of these vintage things. So it was stuff from like the 20s on up into the 90s, and it'll be you'll be able to kind of jump in on lunchboxes or vintage signs or paintings, or there's some car stuff. Anyway, that'll be kind of fun. But
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So
when you're doing this, so the city's footing the bill from a grant, and then do they provide like this man lift, or do you have to like do you partner with people, or is this just like you just run down to the local rental place and rent one of these, or what?
Yeah, so I've done projects in the past that have been like so we've basically had like a company like sponsor the lift and provide the lift, but all this was just a part of the budget. So like the part of the grant paid for this. So this was, we included rental equipment as a part of that initial budget of what we needed to do for it.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Christopher's wondering what city he can find these in.
So this is the city of Casey. So Casey is basically butts right up against Columbia, South Carolina. So Columbia is my home base for about 9 months out of the year. And then usually over in San Francisco, the rest of the time, or somewhere else. Last year it was Paris, so this year it's London. So I do a good bit of traveling just because we can, because it's 2023 and it doesn't matter where you are for doing the work that we do, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
But it's basically the same, just like in Creative South, just across the river from downtown Columbia is basically where this is.
Cool. Yeah, these are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this one was cool. This was an old foundry that was just kind of abandoned and used as a warehouse. And then we were able to clean that whole thing up and paint the entire building. And those are all actually symbols that kind of represent the different things that are unique about that area. So like the first one off to the far left is the Congaree River, which runs right past this. The second one, let's see if I remember here, is there's a steel mill that's right behind this. So this is like represents the steel mill and the rebar that they make. And then there's a quarry at the end of the street. So the third one represents the quarry, like the hole being dug out, all those dots. And then the fourth one, there's historic brick kilns around the corner where they used to make bricks there. And then the last one is a river walk. So they have basically this kind of like pedestrian path that goes down the river and through the woods and stuff. So those are all basically all these like abstract graphics that represented the different kind of, industrial or, community things that are in that area.
That's really amazing. One thing I was going to ask is, I mean, it seems like there's like two elements to what you're doing, which is like one is kind of art related, and design related, and kind of having an opportunity to exercise design. But it also seems really conscious of like upgrading and improving communities. And that's, is that like by design? Is that some like a passion of yours to kind of take these communities that have like broken down built, like I'm just kind of curious if that's like, is that part of the drive?
Will, because you had said something about, what did you there was like a little pun in the thing you said you were doing.
Public works of art.
Works of art. Okay.
Yeah. So that's that was my original my tech startup idea back in the day, was public works of art. And the whole idea was to crowdfund public art, say murals or whatever else. And what you did was you basically overfunded the need for what you needed for the project. And then the money that was overfunded, then you would donate to whatever local nonprofits that actually helped that community.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so the whole way was basically you were able to beautify the community with the artwork, but then everybody in the community actually contributed to that artwork being made. So they had some ownership of it. And then basically, but all public artwork, is temporary. At some point, it's going to be taken away. But it also raised money to help some people, then that could never be taken away. So, so it was never a bad investment. So we actually were able to do that. So the one project, we painted an entire like 85-foot tall water tank, and it was all crowdfunded. And we were able to pay for the water tank to be painted. And we also were able to donate like 60,000 meals to Harvest Hope Food Bank to help people, because we had a major flood in Columbia like around 2015 or something. And so during that time, we actually were able to donate like 60,000 meals to like families that year as a result of painting that mural through Public Works of Art. So that was the original like concept behind it. But it kind of morphed from there into also just doing management and planning and painting public art projects for the purposes of beautifying the communities. And so that's really what it is. It's not about just like expression, because I would be doing some more completely off the wall stuff if I'm just like straight, like, artistic expressing myself on these walls. It's just as much as being accessible as possible while beautifying the community as much as possible, where everybody can just like say, hey, like where I live is much better than it used to be because of the artwork that we put up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then you also got into like sculpture. Is this a new thing at this point, or is this something that you did in the past and kind of revitalized as well?
No, this was cutting teeth. So my idea here was there's no reason. So a lot of the stuff, because I ended up doing a lot of, design work ends up making its way into like the physical space. And so there's no reason that couldn't be applied into sculpture. And so this was, so this was an idea that I had for a bench. I know a really good metal artist named Chris Stike, who has a studio. So he and I worked together. I developed the whole concept and design to it, and they did all the fabrication. So literally like all of these designs within the butterfly wings were like drawn on like my iPad, in like Procreate, and then brought into Illustrator and vectorized so that I could have a vector pattern out of them, and then provided to them as like basically like a die cut, in which they like used a water cutter.
Yeah, one of those little CNC water cutters. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to cut that whole thing.
And so this is a paper.
Yeah, so this is my mock-up of the light diamond, which was then made out of stainless steel. So I made this paper mock-up to make sure that, it would work out. And then we cut the whole thing it was laser cut out of stainless steel and then welded together and then installed here at their art lot. And so the whole idea behind it was that you see the sun on one side and the moon, and it kind of rotates. And so it's kind of about the passing of time. And so during the day, the sun reflects off of it. But then at nighttime, there's a light on the inside. You can go to the next one. And it actually glows from the inside. And the lights actually, pulsate through. You can control the colors of it. So depending on the time of year, or the holiday, or whatever else, we can actually control like what color it is, or whether it rotates through colors and stuff.
Wow.
So, but yeah, that was my first time doing that. Was was that butterfly sculpture and the light diamond were my first two forays into taking the design and applying it to the sculpture world. So
when you're attacking something like that, like all of these projects, actually, it sounds like there's like a lot of logistics behind setting these things up. And a lot of planning. Like all graphic design is like problem solving, but you're doing things like, having active lights that need to pass city ordinances and it's like your second sculpture. Like that's so how do you go about doing that? Do you contract help, like assistants, like to kind of work that out? Do you is it like trial and error? Like just out of curiosity, I guess, like maybe you start with like your first sculpture. How did you go about like doing it? Because like had you done like an install like that before, and then like how do you kind of, I guess, properly back plan so that it effectively happens? If you don't mind me asking, it's just it's fascinating to me. It's a little intimidating actually to see, because I'm like, I don't know how I'd approach that.
I know how I know how I would approach it. I would say, hey, I know this guy named Will.
Yeah, exactly. Give it to you. Exactly.
No, you're absolutely right. So you're absolutely right. So for instance, with that, I had the concept. So I mentioned my friend Chris Dyke, who is a metal artist. And so he's done a ton of metal sculptures. So I knew that he had the ability to create what I had in my head. So what I did was I basically made the initial design, flat design per se, and then took it to him and said, hey, this is my concept. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I do. Like, so what is this doable as is, and if not, like, what do we need to do? What do I need to think about? And so I basically went to somebody who had done it a lot and did have a lot of experience, and basically worked backwards from their wisdom and said, okay, and so get some input from there. Yeah. So I did the same thing with the light diamond. And so we basically, it wasn't like, hey, I decreed this is what it's got to be, figure out a way to make it. It was, hey, tell me what we need to think about in the way that we make stuff, and then I can design to something that can be made.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because like for my day job, I art direct a lot of stuff that's manufactured, and so like there's all these logistics, and you kind of work them out with like the factories or whatever that you're dealing with. But it's like, but it is kind of even in those cases, it's always like this mysterious process how you can like do like 4 sides of something, and then like it becomes like a 3-dimensional thing. It's a cool thing, but the scale of a sculpture and the detail of those things, and then again, like just kind of working out all the permissions from the cities, the grant writing. It's just I don't know. I'm really impressed. Sorry for rambling, but I'm impressed by this stuff.
I'm guessing that probably it's different outside of California.
Oh, 100%. So I will say this.
Because
There's definitely
living in
cities I would
Idaho
not have
now,
done this in.
living in Idaho now and growing up in California, I can tell you that there's a difference in regulation from state to state.
So when I first went to them with the proposal, I told them, like, I have no interest in going to town hall meetings, like in the sense of like
Right.
no group committees, like none of that, like this is for me like a quality of life thing. Hey, I want to do this. I don't need to do this. So if I'm going to do this, then it needs to be simple, and I don't need to be in meetings and getting stuff approved nonstop kind of thing. Now, the good thing is, even though we're like right across the river from like downtown, the capital of South Carolina, it is technically a small municipality, which is really nice because it's basically super low red tape, a few people to work with kind of thing. And so the nice thing is like, hey, we're in the metro area, but technically the local government's tiny for just this little, this little town. So so I also was like, I wouldn't have done it on Columbia as the first one like this. I was like, logistically, I want to keep it as simple and stress-free as possible. And then after we do it, then we're like, hey, I know everything that goes into this. And then I can decide, what that looks like.
So having said all that about California, I mean, you split your time. You also live in San Francisco. So have you ever attempted to do anything over there? Or is that just kind of a nightmare, or you just hadn't had the opportunity? Or
no, the difference is I'm just too busy just vibing when I'm in San Francisco. But it's just, the other difference is that there's so many people in San Francisco that are already great artists that are already doing really amazing things, kind of thing. So I mean, I could, but it's just one of those things to where kind of going back to the point of what we're talking about of like, hey, I want to take something that's old and ugly and run down and turn it back into something beautiful again. Like they've kind of, really done that in San Francisco, where they're always working on it. They're, very conscious of those things. Most of the major cities are. So that's one of the cool things about being in some of the rural areas of the country is they just don't have that kind of mindset, or it's just not built in to their leadership.
And that's also a good opportunity because a lot of times, if you are in a smaller city like that, you might not think there are as many, or there aren't as many opportunities, but there's an opportunity right there because they don't have a lot of other people that are presenting that type of thing. So that happens to, if you are in a smaller community that could use a little, brightening up, then that's definitely something you can pursue.
And having dealt with small government on several other things, nothing like this, but several other things, I can attest to most small municipalities. It's not that they don't want to do this; it's that it's like each person is wearing like 50 different hats. It's not like there's a whole street full of hundreds of employees. There's a few people doing all the stuff, and so you show up with some initiative and they're like, yeah, that sounds great. It's not that they're against it. It's just that they have, they just have limitations of trying to keep the city running. And so a lot of times it'll take somebody like Will to show up and say, hey, let's do this thing. And then people are like, sure, this sounds great.
And that's what this scenario was. It's literally like, hey, you give me a check, I'll give you an art district. And that's kind of what we did. Obviously they've continued it and doing more stuff, and they worked with other artists. Like I helped them pick out several other mural artists who did other murals in the area. And then they recently just come back with, like 3 or 4 other projects that they want to do down there.
That's awesome.
And so like, I'm basically in the position right now to either, do them myself or get other artists down there. And that's really what I was kind of telling Corey and Scott this year coming out of COVID and lockdown. I'm like taking every opportunity to like collaborate with other people in the real world. Just because we took that for granted for a long time and then it got taken away from us. So all these projects that are coming down the pipe, I'm like, okay, what other artists can I bring in to work with on these? Just because, just because we can.
I I also like the approach you're taking with the cities of like kind of being like, look, I don't want to be in a bunch of meetings, because I mean it's pretty common knowledge too in design. Like a camel is a horse designed by committee kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the last thing you want is to take something as complicated as what you're doing and then have it be delayed by like years of just, well, can we revise this? Can we revise this? Which, like, on a client iteration, if it's like an Illustrator file, that's one thing. But it's like, if we're talking about like a building, it's like they kind of need to let you see your vision. And I think that's cool to kind of empower yourself in that way as an artist too, because like honestly, you're gonna know probably better what's gonna build a district, and then you have proof of concept to kind of roll that into the next thing, which is great,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. To your point, I did, and this is another thing, is in doing one-off designs or whatever for a city like that, always like split the design away from the actual execution and painting of it. So like in the sense of like invoice, like billing for it, like, hey, I'm charging one fee to design this mural, the artwork or whatever, and then there's going to be a completely another fee to execute it, right? And then it worked out perfectly for this scenario, because basically I don't even remember how long it was, but it was like, it would have been the largest mural I'd ever done, because it was like a retaining wall down the center, like main street of Aiken, Augusta area, which is on the border of Georgia and South Carolina. And it was like 200 feet long, 16 feet tall, massive. And I worked with a couple of people in the city to come up with the design for it. There's basically like 3 of us, and then we got it settled. And then they decided last second they needed to send it to committee. And so I got paid for the design, and then we never painted the mural. Because as soon as it went to committee, nobody could decide on what they actually wanted it to be, and that it just got completely shelved. So I'm like, so that's why you split the design away from the actual execution, because like I provided them with the mural design, and it's like up to them to decide whether they want to pull the trigger on doing it. Well, as soon as they went to committee, that never happened.
That's actually really smart advice too, for like anybody who would want to look into doing like mural work or something like that. I like that idea. That's kind of like splitting, your roughs and your finals and stuff too. It's always good to chunk things. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, technically somebody else could paint the mural if you provide the design, right?
Right.
And so a lot of mural artists run into that too. Not only mural artists, illustrators and everybody else. Hey, I provided you with this concept. And then you took the concept and had somebody else paint it. Well, as long as you pay me for the concept,
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
We had a question. Let me go see if I can find it. Do the contracts for murals have provisions requiring for future touch-ups and or repairs as the murals age?
Yes. So for instance, the ones with the city, so it was a little bit semi-complicated in the sense of, because you also had building owners that you had to have a contract with, right? So it wasn't just the city who's funding this. You actually, all these buildings are owned by private people, and so we had, in essence, a contract with them that said, hey, you're giving us permission to paint this mural on this building, and I think we said you're going to leave it up for at least 5 years. I think that was the minimum. It had to be you're going to leave it up for at least 5 years, and that you would provide access for us to be able to do touch-ups and everything else. You wouldn't make changes or do touch-ups, that the original artist would have the opportunity to make those. And that was the same thing with the city, was basically that for whatever that period of time was, that the original artist would be the person contacted to be able to make those touch-ups or changes or repairs.
Oh, awesome.
And they could decide whether you had somebody else do it or whether they did it.
Basically like a first right of refusal.
Correct.
Clause. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Have you ever painted a bridge?
Have not painted a bridge. I have one in mind. I have a lot of things in mind, but I haven't painted a bridge. But I do have a bridge in mind that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah,
I
private
actually have
owners
several
means-
bridges in Brain. Well, some of them are like where you walk under the bridge and you have like a really nice like archway,
Mm,
you know,
Right.
like, and so like I have a couple of different ideas of some places where you would have like you could paint the whole mural that goes the whole archway over, like the walkthrough up under it. I think some of those could be cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I have a question about just the way that you are kind of looking at, since you've been doing murals, does it make you kind of look at cities differently? Like you're seeing canvases everywhere?
Oh, 100%. The funny thing is, it's like I can kind of tell you where new buildings are about to go by the places that I would want to paint a mural. Because, like, so for instance, in Columbia, ever since I was in college, because I attended University of South Carolina, I played football here, and that's how I kind of got, stayed here in Columbia area. But everywhere that I had like a Google map where I like had marked out the different places that would be the best places to put murals, because it's usually big, giant, old walls in a great place that has lots of eyeballs, right?
Mhm.
Like, hey, there's lots of traffic here and there's a big, ugly eyesore wall there. We could do something really cool there. Well, that's also the place where real estate developers say, hey, a new building would be great right there. you know,
Right.
Lots of eyeballs, lots of traffic, and there's an old, ugly building there, and we can remodel that or put a new building or whatever else. And so it's funny because so many places that I said, hey, this would be a great place for a mural, ended up being developers ended up building buildings there just because it was also the same thing that made it a great place for a mural, made it a great place for like a new building or something to be remodeled and made nicer kind of thing. So yeah, I absolutely, I absolutely earmark all these places in my head as we go through different cities about what the opportunities could be.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
That's cool. Christopher Runsman is asking where you've worked that required the most safety gear being strapped to you. And that sounds weird now that he's typed it.
I would say so. The water tank that we did was 85 feet tall, but technically I wasn't the primary painter on that one. I designed it and then had a mural artist named Eric Hinn out of Ohio do the main painting on it because he specializes in water tanks, which is a weird thing. But he is the go-to guy if you want something really amazing painted on a water tank. And then, but so obviously we had this boom lift that's going to the, 90 feet in the air. And those things, speaking of Creative South, George was a mural artist. George, what's his full name?
Baker the third.
Yeah,
and he was
that
talking
dude was
about
awesome. I was gonna bring him up.
Yeah, he was talking about how when you get up in those buckets, how they actually sway in the wind. The farther you get up, and they absolutely do sway. So you got to get used to. That.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he was saying he was afraid of heights, and he's a mural artist.
Yeah, we're gonna see if we can get George on because he was cool. So yeah, that was and one of the reasons why. Well, the main reason I started with Will after Creative South was because Will's awesome, and we've been kind of connected now for a couple of years. But there was kind of a couple themes in Creative South, and one of them I feel like was murals. Like I feel like everybody was talking about like doing a bunch of murals. I don't know if that's kind of like a trend of like we were all locked down and stuck inside, and now we're like, let's get away from the computer and do stuff outside and try to.
It's also not a bad idea of an area to go into with so much talk of like AI and stuff, because it's not something that can easily be done with AI unless you're designing AI and then you're doing like vinyl application or something. But
yeah. So that was one theme that I saw was that, and I mean, Will, you and I had talked about the FDOT's presentation back then, and I meant to do that. And man, I wish I had, because it just looks like you're having so much fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, and I do it just as much. I mean, for me to know what it's going to look like on the building. So yeah, it's like, so if you take a good photo of the building, and especially what you're talking about with him, like doing the mock-ups, and you can, because the cool thing about most of those, they're always, almost always brick. So you can figure out the dimensions on them just from a photo, because, whether they're cinder blocks or bricks, they're pretty standard size. And you can figure out the dimensions on them, or at least the aspect ratio. And then you can do your art overlay over it and see what it's actually going to look like. So I'll actually sometimes do like different color variations on a design, and then lay them all in on Photoshop on that, and those kind of mock-ups for me to figure out what would look best, and then, showing them to the owner or to, that way. But it's cool. I mean, it's fun. Like I said, I enjoyed it. Like, I loved doing it growing up. And growing my first murals were way more fine art centric. And then the stuff that I've been doing lately has been a lot more, again, kind of more graphic. I feel I actually wanted to do one where I just kind of let loose, art centric again, just because I haven't done it in so long. But it's just also because, I've been a designer for 20 years. And so it's just my aesthetic is, towards that cleanness. And so, but I also, wouldn't mind just completely giving a wall where nobody gave me any rules, and I just kind of, did whatever I wanted to with it. Would be pretty cool.
I have often wanted this. This is probably the rebel in me, but just to see what I could do, like overnight with some rattle cans, and just kind of go at it and have fun. Yeah, with very little plan, and just kind of see what happens. Yeah.
If I was in a big enough city growing up, I definitely would have been a graffiti guy. It was just, if I did anything where I grew up, everybody would know it was me. They're like, "Oh, that's awesome. Will did that," apparently, because it was just like, you're in a smaller community, and so everybody knew you were the artist.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's a little, I knew a dude in high school that was like, I asked him, I was like, "Dude, why'd you shave your mohawk?" Because he had like a 12-inch tall green mohawk, and he's like, "Do you know how hard it is to do anything fun when you have the only green mohawk in town?
You can get identified from a half a mile away."
Yeah, because he's like, if we got caught doing anything ever, like, it doesn't matter if I ran or not, because everybody knows I'm the only green mohawk in town.
Yeah.
So
Well, didn't you get a chance to do that a little bit, Corey, with the background in your studio there that you painted?
Yeah, and it turned out terribly, man.
Well, I don't know about that.
I absolutely destroyed my studio.
Well, I don't think it was bad.
It was, you know what this is? This is full on Dunning-Kruger is what that is I forget sometimes that, like, skills don't necessarily translate like I think they will. Yeah, thanks. That's what
Nice.
In my mind, I have almost no experience with paint. Like, I started to draw when I was 32. And it was all digital at first until I realized that you've got to kind of figure out traditional. And so I'm only 10 years into this, I guess 11 now as of yesterday, but, and I'm still figuring out ink. And so I went to the wall and I was like, yeah, I'll just, I got an idea of what I want. And I just kind of slapped it. And it was I hate it so much. Anyway, it's fine. It's better than white.
It takes practice.
Yeah.
It just takes practice. I remember on that first one I was telling you about, where I was doing the football player in the sub shop.
Yeah.
I remember switching hands just to be able to get somewhere how I needed to switch hands and paint with my left hand or something.
Yeah.
And I was just completely oblivious with my other hand, which had a cup of jet black paint.
Oh no.
Of course. And so while I'm over here like turning like to paint at this weird angle, I'm also pouring out this black paint. And it went all over my hand and all over my arm. And I just remember like I was like so embarrassed. It was like, maybe like 9:45, 10 o'clock at night. But I was like, oh my gosh. And so like I quickly got everything up that I could and like balled it all up and just like went out the door as fast as possible. And then like went home to like scrub this black paint all off my arms or whatever else, because I'm like, oh yeah, I've got two hands here, and the other one's holding the paint cup. So yeah, you learn some things working with paint that you kind of take for granted whenever you're just doing ink and pencil and stuff.
Yeah.
And then even with murals, when you start working with buckets of paint.
How do you? So this is, and having never done it, Josh works pretty big paper wise because he's like 20 by 30. The biggest
It's not
idea is
wall sized, Corey.
I know, but I'm getting somewhere with this. I'll go like 11 by 17 is about what I work on.
Yeah.
When I'm doing traditional, but I've noticed even with that at certain angles, like you kind of get things distorted. So how do you deal with like that scale of where you're working like at a wall size, because you are 18 inches from the wall, but the wall could be 10 feet tall. And so it's going to be a drastically different experience for those creating it versus those that are viewing it from 10 to 30 feet back.
Sure. And so you have to treat it, and again, it does take practice, but you just basically treat it the same way that you do like some of the, whenever you're doing your like foundational illustration stuff, like, whether you're working with grids, and you're really kind of doing that whole grid scenario, where you're kind of like getting these key points on the wall, and you're going from rough to detailed. So it's you treat it the same way. It's just it's a little bit, it's a slower process, because when you're working right there on paper on your desk, you can kind of sketch, kind of step back, look, sketch, adjust, kind of thing. Where you're doing, I'm on a lift, when I'm doing this, and some of that also will determine whether it's better to use a projector or not too. So like in the sense of, if you're, again, kind of go back to your timetable of how fast you need to do it, sometimes a projector will solve that, at least getting the big stuff in place.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of come back and do all your, your detail stuff. But it's really kind of blocking it out is the big thing that you gotta kind of figure out.
So I have a follow up to that. That's kind of a curiosity thing. We had a guy named Scott, the window painter, on our show a couple times. He's literally like a genius window painter. It's insane. But it's like he talked about, because he did window painting for like 20 years. Maybe how long was it?
Maybe 30.
Yeah, maybe like 30 years. I mean, he's like a veteran of doing this stuff, and he just freehand like on a window, and it's amazing when you watch video of him. He'll just, but he had the foundations of a cartoonist, and so he had trouble actually after doing window painting. He was talking about having difficulty relearning how to kind of work at a small scale because he had gotten so used to working with these big brushes.
Right.
And like all the tools. I was curious, do you have that kind of issue where when you've worked so large, to scale it back down, is that a bit of a challenge? Like after you've had to kind of adapt for the large,
Well, I would say, so whenever I'm doing, so my kind of background in like art, I was mostly like a pencil and ink illustrator, and I didn't do a lot of like painting on like the small scale. Almost all of my painting has been massive scale, and so I haven't had to really like go back and forth because it's almost a different medium than I use, and so like with some people, like, hey, they paint a lot of smaller portraits or kind of thing. So they're painting in the small scale and they're also painting in the large scale.
Yeah.
And so you would have that kind of back and forth. Whereas when I'm doing small scale stuff, I'm usually kind of doing pencil ink kind of things. And then digital, obviously. And so most of my experience with the paint stuff, like all my paint brushes are massive. So I'm never having to go back to the small things. Now we'll say one of the things that you have to figure out is you realize the level of detail that you need based on the size of the mural, right? So it's just like anybody who's a graphic designer who's done a billboard, and you realize like, hey, like the DPI on a billboard is, like tiny,
right?
Because you're seeing it from so far away, like you don't actually need that much detail, and that's one of the things that it also can speed up your process, is being selective about that detail. because for me, like being like, you know, a semi-perfectionist with it, like I would always want everything to be so ridiculously crisp and detailed. Like I wanted things that looked like they were printed, you know, with a brush, you know. But then like you know, one of the things, the one that we were looking at that had the VHS stripes on it and the flowers, like, so a lot of those flowers ended up leaving actually pretty much rougher than I would typically like to, and you can't tell at all until you get right up on it, which is, you know, 1% of people, and it's only if they're there like looking at it as a painter, you know. But from the distance that everybody else sees it, you know, you wouldn't tell any difference whether I had that, you know, those lines were perfectly crisp or whether they weren't, kind of thing. Yeah. So
that's true. Yeah.
So that's the other thing too, is you also figure out like, hey, on the small scale, I need those things to be perfectly crisp. Right. But in that, for that scale where you're going to be looking at it from 20, 30 feet away, the vast majority of the time, you don't have to, you know, and so you got a little bit of more leeway that way.
Awesome.
Emma is asking if it's different for city murals, walking, rural, driving by. Like, do you take like the speed or location of your viewers kind of into account?
Yeah, absolutely. So like, for instance, like, hey, if this is something that's going to be like inside of a restaurant where everybody's like sitting there and can like appreciate it, then you would go to way more detail. Like, or I would design something that you could be appreciated for a longer amount of time. You know, if this is something kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where it was a retainer wall on a, you know, a main strip where it's all like car traffic, not pedestrian traffic. Well, that's going to be appreciated at, you know, 35 miles an hour as you go by. So then that design doesn't benefit from being super detailed. So then you would have something big and bold, you know, that you would appreciate in like, you know, as you drive by in 3 seconds. So yeah, so the location absolutely kind of informs like how much detail you want to go, like, or, you know, how much you want to flex into it. Because if you put a lot of detail in some of those, it'd be completely lost, you know, other than for the gram.
Well, and I feel like just, and this isn't for any of us because we all understand this, but this is one of those things that I think somebody who's just starting out might need to really dive into contrast. Because like value contrast, hue contrast of like simplicity versus complexity, you know, a good understanding of like, you know, depth or, you know, shape contrast or any types of those things. Like contrast is is the number one thing that will control like whether or not people can understand something at speed. And so what I love about yours is you're not just using one type of contrast. You've got so many different levels of contrasting things that help even the more complex ones be able to get read quickly. Like the car one that you've got has some fairly complex kind of shapes to it. And yet, because you have so many areas of simplicity, and then you're using color temperature contrast as well as value contrast in those, you're able to still read like car pretty fast.
Yeah. And like I said, and that was a little bit of a hybrid in the sense of like the building was painted in the big bold stripes, and then we had like that detailed corner with like the hot rod on it. So like that was literally a garage where a guy remodels old hot rods, you know.
Awesome.
And so and I really wanted to do a sign for him too, but we didn't have it in budget because I wanted to come up with a cool hot rod, you know, sign to hang outside that garage. But but that was a little bit of a hybrid in the sense of we wanted the whole building to have that punch of color that you could see from a mile away. But then when you got closer to it, then you could appreciate the details of the actual hot rod itself, you know. So it was a little bit of a hybrid of between the mural / art building scenario there.
Here's a good question.
That's a good question from Christopher.
Yeah. What's the record for how much sunshine you've gone through on a job?
Well, I don't need to be on a job. So like I'm like absolute like snowman. And so I get sunburnt. You know, I got sunburnt when we went to the food truck festival on Saturday at Creative South. like we were outside for like an hour or whatever else, like waiting on our pineapple lemonade, and I get burned.
Right.
So sunscreen for me, SPF whatever, a billion, is always a part of the toolkit.
It's just like
nonstop.
skin-colored lead paint, just to give you that. Yeah. No,
It's like, like a roller for the wall and a roller for me.
Some people get spray tans. We'll just need to get spray suntan. I did not bring sunscreen, and that's why I had to bail, is because at work I have to wear a shirt and tie, and so my neck is like the whitest, palest thing, and then I don't see the sun for like 4 to 6 months of the year, and I'm coming out of the end of that, and then I go into Georgia, and it's just beautiful and humid, and there's a nice breeze, and the sun's out, and I was standing there talking to people while you were waiting in line, and I realized I've been in the sun for I don't know how long, but this is going to hurt if I don't like bail soon. Like I don't have like a like when I grew up, I just had like a base layer tan, constantly, and now I'm just like the white. Well, I would say I'm the whitest I've ever been, but I lived in Scotland for 2 years, and I found out that Caucasians can become transparent. Like I had like no color. It was
the land of zero melanin.
Yeah, I was like one of those plastic anatomical dolls that you get where the skin is just see-through, so you can see all the organs and stuff. Yeah.
I was just thinking about the old He-Man character that was like see-through. You got all the organs.
Right, yeah.
That's true.
I just saw so Jim's question about how much rejection did you have to deal with. That's a good question, because so the ideal scenario is like you put the stuff out and then like it's 100% accepted and you like rock and roll, let's just make it, and it's not reality. So to give you an example, that first mural we looked at, the Enjoy mural that was on the side of the convenience store, I'd been working for about 3 months with the owner of the building next to it to figure out a mural, because it was a better wall, and that the owner kept rejecting the designs over and over and over and over and over again, and I do not like wasting my time. And so the reality is that I literally, it's like, okay, this isn't going to happen with this wall, even though it was the perfect wall to launch this on. And so I actually went to the library just so I could get away with my iPad and drew out that mural for the building beside it, that Enjoy the Little Things mural, and then photoshopped it and then took it over there that day to the owner of the convenience store, and the only reason it's on that store is because the one beside it, the owner of the building beside it would never approve anything. And so they missed out on a free mural. Right. 100%. Right. And I also like to I don't like to put myself in a situation where I have to get somebody's sign off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like anything that I do, I want to like say, all right, if it's not cool with you, then it's not cool with me either. So, I'll move on to the next thing. But there was and it's just the same thing with like client design or whatever else, depending on how many people need input, depends on how complicated it is. So like the building that had the flowers and the stripes on it was a completely different design that was already approved. And then the two owners approved it, but then one of them took it home and showed their wife. And their wife did not like it at all. And so we did a redesign on that one.
Do you, when that happens to you, do you make sure that person is in the room the next time?
Oh yeah. So absolutely. Yeah. So
every time that's happened to me, the trick is like, and you got, if you want to maintain the relationship, you don't say it with like division or anything, but I always just say, it feels like there's some decision makers that aren't in the room right now. Let's get them on board. I value everybody's opinions, but I'd rather not waste everybody's time by kind of going back and forth. So let's get all the stakeholders in. Let's bring your dog and your goldfish and your wife and her friend and whoever is going to weigh in on this. And let's do this in one meeting.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And and if that's too many people, then I'll pass on the project altogether.
Right. Yeah.
If possible, unless it's like something over the top where it's like, hey, this is necessary for this type of thing. But yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I would say 80% of my stuff gets approved the first time. Like in the sense of the design I come to the table with, they're like, yeah, this is great, let's do it. And about 20% of it will need to like modify. And then very rarely do we have to do a completely redesign. But that was one of them that we did have to do a complete redesign. The other one was just so I don't know. I just punted on the whole project. Like, oh, I'll paint every other building other than yours.
Right.
And so yeah, I hadn't worked with somebody who was like couldn't communicate who could so clearly communicate what they wanted and then give it to them and then them not want that.
I love that your revenge to that situation was to make all of the buildings around his business just amazing.
We did. We literally painted every building around them.
Did that person eventually try to paint their own, or did they just keep it the way?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, they did. They actually just recently had somebody paint one on, and it turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
Good.
What was I going to say? What was the other part of that? I don't know. It'll come to me in a minute. I had a comment about something on there that was relevant. That was good. I'll think about it in a moment.
Yeah. Well, we promised an hour and a half. We're over that. I'm cool to keep going for a little bit, but I know that you're a few hours ahead of us. So.
This is good. This has been fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we'll have to have you on again. Let us know anytime that you want to come on, and I'll probably reach out in a few months next time I run out of gas again and do that. But
yeah. Hopefully by then I'll have some more of these projects done and we can look at some new stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe I'll convince my local city to fly you out and we'll like tag team the Main Street.
Yes, and then we can go to Yosemite. Like we can knock it all out at the same time.
So, good. We got one more question. Well, one more question from the crowd, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Do the owners give you sketches? Have you ever had a business owner say, because I actually have had a client reach out to me and say, hey, I've got this idea, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of describe it, or they can't draw, but they'll kind of is it you always kind of just pitching like, hey, I've got this idea, I've done some research, da, 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 or is there some kind of like client side feedback at the start?
It can go both ways. So most of the stuff that I've been doing now on the public art side, I have come with the concept and basically pitched them on it. Some of the stuff that I'd done previously, like back originally when I was doing murals, a lot of the owners would come up with like, hey, this is what I want conceptually. And then I would, develop the designs based on, basically kind of creating a creative brief for what that mural should be. And so that was a lot more common whenever I was working. So like, for instance, did like a lot of like hospital stuff or like school stuff. Like they would know like, hey, we want something that's completely like this themed, whether it's, a jungle or whatever else. And then I would come up with all the designs or whatever else. But they never came to me with like imagery, like, hey, I want you to paint this. It was more of, we want this type of thing or this, topic or whatever else. But like I said, most of the stuff I do now, I'm coming with the concept and pitching them on it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. We're wrapping. So we've got people that are all heading to bed now. So thanks for coming on. Stick around for a minute right after we cut this off.
Sure.
But real quick, give us a pitch on where we can find your stuff and where we can follow you.
So on the social side, Instagram is really where I'm active, and so that's Public Works of Heart is where if you want to follow these art district projects that I'm working on, That's where you can see a lot of that stuff. I also post a lot of it on Will Bryan Design as well. I kind of use Will Bryan Design. It's my main one. So if you're like DMing me and stuff like that, that's where you can usually reach me. But those two are the two good places that you can find my stuff, and you can find my links to the rest of the things that you got going on. But Pub Works of Heart and Will Bryan Design, and that's on Instagram, Twitter. It's pretty much on all the socials.
Cool. And Will's website is in the description of this video if you're watching this on YouTube, and probably in the other places as well. But I can confirm YouTube for sure. So you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. And if you want a shirt that looks as cool as Scott's shirt right now, then you can go to CoreyKerr.com/store. I got to do that one on a mural. Anyway, got lots of good stuff. I'll be kind of getting back into the swing of doing the newsletter as well. So if you want to jump on that, that's her as well. And we'll be talking more about Creative South over the next few weeks as we have some more of those guests from friends that we've kind of met or reconnected with on this recent trip. But Josh, where can we find your stuff?
Yeah, you can find my stuff on YouTube under Joshua Kemble. You can get my books, Jacob's Apartment. Yes. Jacob's Apartment. Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories at bookstores, online, anywhere. And I encourage you guys to do that. Ask your local libraries to carry it. And then aside from that, just joshuakemble.com. And cool. Will, it was awesome meeting you through this. It's inspiring work, really.
Oh, thank you very much.
Cool. That was cool. And Scott, where can we find your stuff, and how do we keep in touch with where the Artcasters is going to be?
So you can find my stuff at on my YouTube channel. It's circworks.com. I'm currently not posting videos, kind of rethinking things. I'll be coming back at some point with something new and different. But until then, there's like over 1,000 videos, most of them on making comics that you can check out. You can also find a bunch of stuff at my website, including my comic book, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure stories. Just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. You'll also find tools and digital tools and things for making comics, all of that stuff, as well as prints and all that kind of stuff over at my website. And as far as this show, the Artcasters, we do this show every single week. It rotates between, there's a kind of a change. It used to rotate between the three of our channels, but I'm not going to be posting any Artcasters on my channel anymore, because while I'm trying to figure out what to do with that channel, I'm just not. So even though I will be hosting technically, because we share hosting duties, like today Corey's hosting on his channel, but when I host, meaning I'm the one that will get the guest and organize everything, just behind the scenes stuff, but I'll be posting it to one of either Josh or Corey's channel. If you're just subscribed to my channel or whatever, you definitely want to subscribe to these guys' channel, because you won't find Artcasters on my channel anymore. But there's an easier way to know exactly whose channel we're going to be on, and that's just to join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything. Usually about 30 minutes before we go live, we'll send out a newsletter, and all it is just to tell you where you can find us. It'll tell you who the guest is going to be, what the topic is, and all that stuff. So, because YouTube doesn't always notify people when we go live. So yeah, definitely check that out. There's a link in the description for that. So, and cool. Also I wanted to thank the chat, anyone who's still awake and in the chat, thanks for chiming in and everything, and the questions and all that kind of stuff. It's great to kind of keep the conversation moving along with you guys as well. So
yeah, it was good. And we'll be having a lot more people on, so make sure that you guys come with questions in the future like you did today. That was awesome. So, okay, we will see you guys all next week, and go make stuff. And now the giant long pause